Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the started ride for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a chief storyteller as well as an author and the author of the book Finding Your Capital S Story. Why your story drives your brand. None other than Mr. Paul Furiga.
Hey, Daniel.
Welcome,
Thank
Mr. Paul, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Well, thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me on, and appreciate your audience being here too. The people who know us best, my clients, will tell you that what I really am is a great storyteller, and I came by that legitimately. I spent 20 years in journalism, covering everything from murders to the White House, but not murders in the White House. That's a TV show that you should check out. And then that led me into another 20 plus year career in the agency business, which is where I still am. Uh, I was with people as a journalist in the best of times, worst of times, a lot of beginnings, middles, and ends. I figured it out one time, Daniel. I wrote 10,000 stories and edited another 10,000 during more than 2 decades in journalism that really taught me a lot about what moves people's hearts and minds. It led me to start my own agency, Word Right, which I ran for 23 years. And we recently joined forces with the Vendilli Group, which is primarily a digital agency. And they needed what would benefit from us bringing our PR and content and strategy to the team. And we get the benefit of the great Vendilli team and all their digital expertise. It is ultimately all about the story.
Definitely, and thank you so much for sharing your story to the world, Mr. Paul. Thank you. So let's start with the title itself. Why exactly is a capital S a story, and how is fundamentally different from the smaller anecdotes and case studies we typically use in a business?
Well, that's a great question, Daniel. And as business leaders, we tell lots of stories. We may need to get something done by the end of the day. We need to explain to somebody who works for us why that needs to happen. We may have quarterly goals. That needs to be a story. We may have an annual plan. That's a story. The capital S story gets that capital S because it's the one story that any organization shares that stands above all the others because it answers four fundamental questions. Danny, those questions are: why would somebody buy from you? Why would somebody work for you? Why would somebody invest in you? And why would somebody partner with you? Now, the answers to those questions define the character and nature of an organization. And that is the capital S story.
Interesting, Mr. Paul. What personal or professional experience led you to realization that most brands were missing their capital S story?
Well, Daniel, it was that 20 years in journalism that I told you about. I have to say, a significant portion of that time was spent as a business journalist. And I got to work with a lot of folks who were trying to promote or publicize the story of their company. And honestly, most of those stories are terrible. They aren't really a story at all. They're a bunch of bullets and features and benefits. And if they were to share that story with you 10 minutes later, it would be utterly forgettable. Now, the human brain is thousands, millions of years old. Our biology is wired for narrative, it's baked into our brains. At the very elemental level of our brains, what some people call the old brain or the reptilian brain, there are six primary stimuli that cause us to behave the way we do. One of those is motion,
Mhm.
peripheral vision. Another is looking for energy conservation. The brain typically weighs only 3% of your body weight, but it consumes 23% of your energy. And so the brain is always looking to see whether or not it needs to pay attention to something. This is why college students fall asleep in the middle of long, boring lectures, because the brain says nothing worth paying attention to here. And sadly, Daniel, that's what most business marketing and communications is. It's a bunch of boring dreck, right? So the brain is designed to look for beginnings, middles, and ends. Our work has three primary thinkers as its pillars. Simon Sinek, who's written three great books, the first of which was Start with Why. The basic premise of his thinking is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And there's a lot of talk in business about why. The other two pillars, thinkers for us, Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist, who came up with the concept of the story above all others, the hero's journey, in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And Carl Jung, one of the two best known psychoanalysts of the 20th century, who came up with this concept of what he calls the collective unconscious, which simply put, he learned in his work that human beings, regardless of ethnicity, economic attainment, country, language. We all tell the same stories over and over. Daniel, this is why the Marvel comic universe can put out 40 plus movies that are basically the same story over and over again. Our brains are hardwired for what we call archetypal stories. And the failure of most businesses is to understand what archetypal stories are in their capital S story, and then to turn around and use those to their advantage.
Mr. Paul, I hope one day too you can create a book talking about how, not only why.
Yes.
Many brands hoping sooner or later, yes. So many brands strive to be authentic. How does finding your capital S story protect a brand from the performative authenticity that consumers can easily see through?
Well, let me give you an example. Daniel, if I said to you that our agency got a great new client, and then I went into 20 bullet points about technology and software and SaaS and platforms, you'd forget it. But if I said to you that our new client was a David and Goliath story, you don't need to be a biblical scholar to know it's the underdog story. And so, what companies are missing in their brand narratives is understanding what archetypal story or stories. Typically, we find that most of our clients have a combination of two or three archetypal stories that make up their capital S story. This is how consumers remember a company. They're going to forget the price. They may remember the color of the product, but long after the initial purchase, their connection to that company is going to be more about its story.
You say that the story drives the brand.
Yes.
How does a clearly defined capitalized story serve as the internal North Star of a company's decision making beyond just external marketing?
Well, that's a great question. So, unfortunately, most of the brand work that we see is tactical. What color is your logo? What color is my book? That is the end point. I liken it to taking a trip, say, to California. Nobody's going to jump in their car without any pre-planning and say, "Let's go to California." You're going to have a budget. You're going to know what road you want to take, how many stops you're going to make. So the story is the strategy that has to come before the brand. Of course, your colors are important. Of course, your logo is important. But those are iterations, or should be, of the story that you and only you and your organization possess. Far too often, what I see in marketing is folks are wanting to start at the end of the journey instead of doing the necessary and very valuable planning and messaging that has to come first.
On discovery and uncovering the story, Mr. Paul, what does the initial process of finding this story look like for a business leader or founder?
Another great question, Daniel. So let's take a look at a founder led company, maybe a startup. For some reason, the person who started that company said to themselves one day, you know what? I can do this better than any of the competitors. Or maybe they said, I can invent something that solves a problem nobody else has solved before. There's some sort of passion at the heart of a startup company or one led by a founder that is the raw material for that capital S story. Maybe the person is developing a new way of doing things, so they're an innovator or a navigator. Maybe they're a creator. Maybe they're providing a healthcare solution that improves caregiving. And by the way, what I'm doing here by throwing out words like caregiver or innovator or creator is giving you examples of archetypal narrative families that we often see in our work.
Mr. Paul, founders are often so close to their business they can't see the story. What is the key question you ask to help them step back and see the narrative forest for the operational trees?
Yeah, that's another great question. So the book talks about our trademark process, story crafting, which typically takes 60 to 90 days. And the goal of this process is to uncover and develop that capital S story. Two critical steps in that process, Daniel, that speak directly to your question. Number one, it's more than the CEO. Let's talk to the senior team. We get them in a room and we ask them to develop or uncover the raw material of the story. I've never been in one of these situations where everybody agrees with what the CEO says. And that's actually good because you need more raw material to create a stronger narrative. Now, related to that, we love to have the opportunity to talk to investors or partners or ideally customers to get their understanding of what they believe the company's story to be. And then all of this becomes the raw material that allows us to fashion that capital S story narrative that delivers the best possible business results.
The why versus the what. Simon Sinek made the
Mhm.
start with why famous. How
Yes.
does the capital S story framework build upon or differ from the concept?
Well, as we talked about a few minutes ago, our brains are hardwired for stories, and there are certain story narratives that don't require explanation. I gave the example of David versus Goliath, the underdog story. We call these synaptic shortcuts. Daniel, too much time is spent in marketing, educating people about aspects of a company's products or services that is truly just unnecessary. If more companies started by sharing their story, they would gain the benefit of this synaptic shortcut process where people would say, you know, whether it's B2B or B2C, I know what kind of company this is right away. And they would decide immediately whether or not this is the kind of company they want to interact with. Then we can have a shorter and more productive conversation about the specifics of the company's offerings that results in a sale.
Very well said, Mr. Paul. Very well said. Why is why is it a mistake to relegate these core stories solely to the marketing department? What are other parts of the organizations need to be living this story?
So, Daniel, if you think about the four questions that I described, why would somebody buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you? Of those three latter questions, The answer to why somebody would work for you is critically important. We saw around the world coming out of the COVID pandemic the difficulty that many organizations had retaining and hiring talent. And what we learned during that period of coming out of COVID, when talent was so difficult to acquire and retain, was that some of the best storytelling about companies was being done by the HR leaders. They were really in the fire. They needed to keep the team that the company had, and they needed to add to it. How are they going to compel folks to do that? If you look at the economy globally, Daniel, there's a very small top tier of large companies. And then the majority of companies in the world would be considered more medium size and small businesses. Any day of the week, those few small number of very top tier large companies are going to be able to offer better benefits, better pay, et cetera, et cetera. So, how do all the other organizations in the world compete for talent? It's the story. And research has been done on this, especially millennials and Gen Z, who now make up the majority of the workforce. These folks are looking to work for companies that have a just cause. There are very few of them that are interested in just working for companies that can toxic waste because it pays a lot of money. They're looking for a reason to belong, a cause that they can be a part of. And that's your story.
Indeed, a story indeed. So, Mr. Paul, as chief storyteller, as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Well, short term, through visiting with people like you and your audience, Daniel, the goal is to let people know more about this concept of the capital S story. It's a vibrant and timeless concept that I fear modern marketing has forgotten. Storytelling is as old as human civilization. Daniel, I'm sure when the first person figured out how to start a fire on purpose and explained it to the second person, they told a story, probably about barbecued meat. I don't know, but it was definitely a story. So the short term goal is to help people understand the importance, the primacy of this capital S story. The longer term goal is to leave a legacy of better marketing and communications because we're not cluttering the world with digital dreck that is so difficult for our brains to sort through in order to find meaning. I want to help us create meaning in business so that people are more quickly and more productively connected to create the best possible results.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Paul, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
Number one is connect with your passion. Sometimes it takes a while to figure out what that is. Uh, I had a lot of people tell me that I was a storyteller and that my focus should be on storytelling before I accepted the idea that it was a worthwhile pursuit. And once I did, I've had a lot of fun and I've helped a lot of folks grow their companies by focusing on the story. Related to that, I would say, is to remain teachable and to be curious. The world changes so quickly. When we hire young people at our agency, I always ask them a question. Now, 10 years ago, that question was, how many college courses did you have in Facebook? And they would always laugh because they didn't have any courses in Facebook. Well, now the question is, how many courses did you have in TikTok or Snap? And I still get the same laugh. My point on that is this: communication and storytelling is timeless, but the means by which we share these stories is going to continually evolve. And so for me, being a learner has allowed me to understand how to tell stories with new mediums. Regardless of what your passion is, your pursuit of that passion will benefit. I, I guarantee you, by being a learner. A good friend of mine, Daniel, said it's possible to die while you're still breathing. If you stop learning, you'll be dead from the neck up.
Mr. Paul, thank you for that advice. So, can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Well, I certainly I mentioned one. So, "Start with Why" by Simon Sinek, which has become something of a classic. His latest book, which is now about 3.5 years old, "The Infinite Game," I would highly recommend. In that book, he talks about the concept of just cause companies and also about organizations that are focused on creating lasting value. It's a great read, even if you don't desire to be the next Steve Jobs. And as Jobs once said, put a dent in the universe.
Well, thank you for the recommended books, Mr. Paul. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. A comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, as well as my Bible Verses 101, Love Letters in fourth season, and Movie 101 review, as well as Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its second season. So please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Paul, as a consumer, especially younger generations, continue to demand more from the brands they support. Why is mastering this level of storytelling becoming less of a nice to have and more of a business imperative?
Two reasons, Daniel. Number one, our digital world has caused our attention spans to continue to shrink. Microsoft did a study in 2005. The basic question that they were seeking to answer is, how long is our attention span? They measured human beings against goldfish. Goldfish have an 8-second attention span. We have a second attention span as human beings. I'm sure in 20 years, it's only gotten worse. And the second reason is traditional marketing, especially with millennials and Gen Zs, is looked down upon. They don't trust it. They expect most brand advertising and brand marketing to be full of lies. Storytelling, if it's rooted in authenticity and you have a fluent storyteller and you're continually reading your audience to make sure they're engaged, that's the path to success. And it is not only the best path to success, it is the only one that has longevity. Long after people have forgotten how to spell Facebook, we will still be telling stories.
Definitely, Mr. Paul Furiga. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your finding your capital S story?
Well,
Okay,
thank
Mr.
you.
Paul. Yeah, so Mr. Paul, where do people can buy your book or any advocacy or any projects that you're doing right now? Please invite our listeners.
Well, thank you. Number one, the book is available on Amazon, so you can do that. Number two, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, my first name and last name um, together, and certainly at our company, Vendilli.com. That's a V like victory, ENDILLI.com. Vendilli.com.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Paul Furiga because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering story for sure to come. So, Mr. Paul, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. And thank you to your audience as well for joining us. I really appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon.